It's no understatement to say that Starfield is probably one of the most important Xbox titles, not just releasing this year, but probably releasing for the generation. I feel like there is a lot of hype around this game, there's a lot of doubt around this game, there's a lot of unknown and mystery about whether or not this would be a good game, whether Bethesda can still pull off a good game, whether Xbox can still publish a good game. So today, what I kind of want to do is speak hypothetically in a world out there in the future, sometime in September when Starfield finally releases to the people, what if Starfield flops? Alright, so first things first, I want to get something out of the way pretty early on. Looking at everything that I've seen of Starfield, nothing about it screams flop. Nothing about it screams failure. For everything that I've gathered, it looks like a fun game. It looks like a very large, explorative world. And it looks like Bethesda's very ambitious with this title. And if they do land on everything that they promised they're going to land on, this is going to be a phenomenal game for years to come. With all that being said, every publisher, every developer is going to tell you their game is the biggest and baddest. So, let's just say Starfield comes out to the people and it's not what Xbox, it's not what Bethesda has promised people. Or what if it is, it's just not as fun as maybe they thought it would be for the Xbox fan base. So let's consider this question: if Starfield flops. Well, what is flop for this specific conversation? Because let's be honest, sales aren't a focus for Xbox. Game sales don't really matter to Xbox currently right now. It's really just engagement, subscribers, and Metacritic score. So, for this situation, for the purpose of this conversation, let's say if Starfield does not deliver on its Metacritic score, if it doesn't get enough engagement that people kind of want from Game Pass, if it doesn't get people to go out there and buy and subscribe to Game Pass, then it'll be a flop. If the general fan base of Xbox is saying this isn't a fun game, then that's what we're going to say it's a flop. Sales aside, all that stuff aside, it needs to review well and needs to have the fan base around it. So how would this game flop anyways? What about it will be not really hitting the way fans want it to hit? Well, let's discuss some of the criticisms that some of the people have kind of lobbied at Starfield right now. There's 1,000 planets. So when we first heard about the 1,000 planets, everyone had this same groan. Ugh. There's no reason to have 1,000 planets when all your 1,000 planets aren't going to be fun. There's no way you can make 1,000 planets and make them engaging, fun, and worth visiting. And Todd Howard himself has recently came out and said that out of those 1,000 planets, only 10% of them are actually going to be full of life. Now, a lot of people are beginning to speculate, what does full of life mean? Is this a whole nother, we're only going to see gameplay at the Xbox showcase kind of narrative? Are we just like playing with the words and saying full of life and meaning like there's going to be things there? Or is it going to be full of life as in they're actually worth visiting and there's a whole story there to go through? Because if that is the case, if Todd Howard is saying that 10% of 1,000 planets, 100 planets are full of life, and that full of life means that it's fun and engaging and you want to go there, that's a solid ass game. That's a kick ass game. But if it's just there's animals and plant life and stuff like that, then that doesn't really, like, it's not really what people want out of a video game. We don't want just life for sake of life. We want there to be a reason to kind of explore around this life, reason to engage with these worlds. If you have 100 planets, 1,000 planets, whatever the hell planets you have, they have to have a reason for me to want to engage with it. So let's say the 1,000 planets are for a waste of time and they don't really deliver the way that they hit. I think that'll be very disappointing as far as just time spent. For example, if this game comes out and we find out that, let's say, 20 of those 1,000 planets are really where the game is at. These 20 planets are where the game shines. The rest of it is just there to kind of bulk up the experience, but it doesn't really add anything to the experience. Then, yeah, I think that'll be a waste of just time, development, resources, money, and just overall, like, the fan base's time, because people have been anticipating this game since it was announced. We were very disappointed when it got moved to next year or to 2023, and then it got pushed even further along down the road in 2023 up to September. And now we're finally at the precipice of this game releasing, and if it doesn't deliver on what people wanted it to deliver back in 2022, back when they announced it, then it's going to be very depressing as far as just the world is concerned, as far as just the way people are going to want to engage with this game for a long time to come. Another huge kind of roadblock obstacle in the marketing and PR of this game that recently we've been experiencing is the whole 30 frames per second. So it was announced recently that on console, Starfield is going to run at a locked 30 frames per second, and PC players were like, that's fine because we'll do whatever we got to do to make this game run at whatever the hell we want to run it at. But console gamers were very upset about this, very angry. There were the few that were saying that it's fine, it's not the end of the world, like they're still going to play it. But you always kind of got to wonder, did Xbox lie to you when they told you that 60 frames per second was the future? That no more were they going to be running games at 30 frames per second? Because they have yet to release a 30 frames per second game. Now, I choose to believe that Todd Howard and the team at Bethesda play this game at 30 frames per second, and they themselves understand that this game is fine at 30 frames per second. It doesn't really need to hit 60 frames per second. And I think a lot of Xbox fans kind of agree on that, at least right now, until the game comes out. But let's say the game comes out and at 30 frames per second is a game changer that ruins the game, it doesn't make it playable, etc., etc. I think that'll forever change the way Xbox players are going to handle 30 frames per second in their games. I think every game moving forward is going to be judged a lot harder if Starfield's 30 frames per second ruins the game. Now, vice versa, the game comes out and it's 30 frames per second and it's not a hindrance on the experience, then we're going to be a lot more accepting when things like Avowed, when things like Fable come out at 30 frames per second, because we're going to be like, okay, like, Xbox has built up somewhat of a track record of 30 frames per second not being a deal breaker. But again, that's assuming that the game runs fine on console at 30 frames per second. Now, for PC players, the newest kind of roadblock that's hitting Starfield is this whole AMD situation. So I'm not going to pretend like I understand anything about PCs, to be honest. I understand you guys do a lot of things to make these games run fine, and I understand there's a lot of things that can hinder that experience on PC. From what I gathered, this game is going to be running on whatever AMD is, and from what I gathered, PC players don't seem to be very happy about whatever the hell AMD is, and they prefer DM whatever. So I don't know how far that's going to ruin the PC experience, and if they don't get the PC fan base on board with Starfield early on, that might be detrimental. That might ruin this game completely, because right now, from what I'm hearing, it's the PC players that are more excited about Starfield than it is really actually the console players. The console players are going to play it just to play it, but the PC players are the ones that are excited to get this game, to mod it, to play around with it, to adjust it, to do what they can to kind of tweak this game to make it better, not just for them but for the community. And if AMD is something that it's going to ruin the experience for the PC player, then you might lose a huge chunk of your fan base really early on, and probably the most important part of your fan base, the people who are going to be modding this game, the people who are going to be adjusting this game and making it fun. Now again, I don't know how much AMD is actually tied into that, or if that's really just something that we can deal with. Let me know down below if you guys are a PC player and again AMD is something that you're fine with, it doesn't really ruin the experience, or let me know if that's like a complete deal breaker for you guys. Overall, I think if this game Starfield comes out and it doesn't come out with the reception that Bethesda wants it to come out with, if it doesn't come out with the reception that Xbox wants it and that the fans want from it, I do think it's gonna kind of shape the way we look at the next future projects for Xbox. I think Xbox has this really good way of showing us the things that we want to see, but then when they finally release, it doesn't release in the state that was 100% promised, and they kind of hype you up from the beginning and slowly trickle down bad news to you until the game that you're getting is not the same game that you're hyped up to begin with. I'm sure when Starfield was first announced, everyone was hyped to play this game at 60 frames per second. PC players weren't even thinking of AMD. And now that these kind of things are starting to trickle out slowly, I see people more like wavering under hype. They're more like, I'll still play it, but like I'm not as hyped, or this is kind of ruins the experience in general. Um, Overall, we won't really know until the game releases, but if the game does flop, yeah, I do think Xbox is going to take a huge L on this one. They're going to take a huge X, and I think it's going to ruin any momentum they have going into 2024. I think a lot is riding on Starfield as far as just Xbox credibility, Bethesda's credibility, and how much trust the consumers have in them releasing a solid product on the Xbox Series consoles. And I'm gonna be honest, if Starfield doesn't release the way we want it to, I'm gonna be looking at things like Fable, Avowed, Clockwork Revolution. I'm gonna look at these games with a bigger microscope as far as, all right, where are the lies? Where are they telling me things that I want to hear, and where is the truth actually? But if Starfield does deliver on everything that they swear this game is, then I'm gonna be a little bit more relaxed, and I'm gonna trust them that they know what they're doing with their future projects. Anyways, you guys, I'm gonna end this topic with that. Let me know down below what you guys think. Like this video if you guys enjoyed this type of video. Please consider subscribing, as it does help me out tons. And with that, I'll see you guys on the next video.